Your cardinal has been raising a stranger's chick, and his own children paid the price. Somewhere in your yard this season, a nest held one chick that was never his, bigger, hungrier, growing faster than anything he'd raised before, and he fed it anyway. Most people assume every mouth he's feeding is his own. Nobody ever told them that isn't always true. Subscribe to Bird Sense right now. This is exactly the kind of thing we uncover every week, and how a stranger's chick ends up in your cardinal's nest, and what it costs him when it does. That is what changes everything. To understand what he is actually doing, you have to understand the brown-headed cowbird, a species that never builds a nest of its own. Instead, a female cowbird watches other birds build theirs, waits for the right moment, and slips a single egg into the nest when the owner isn't looking, sometimes removing one of the original eggs in the process, so the total count still looks right. Cardinals are one of dozens of species. Cowbirds target this way across North America, from backyard nests in Missouri to hedgerows in Pennsylvania to suburban shrubs in Texas. The egg gets left behind. The female cowbird moves on to parasitize another nest entirely, and the cardinal is left holding a responsibility he never agreed to and has no way of detecting. Here is where it gets strange. Cardinals, in most documented cases, cannot tell a cowbird egg apart from their own. The cowbird egg is close enough in size and coloring to pass a basic visual check, and cardinals never evolved the fine-grained egg recognition that some other species use to catch and reject parasitic eggs. So the cardinal incubates it, right alongside her own clutch, giving it exactly the same warmth and attention for exactly the same number of days. By the time it hatches, there is no test left to fail. The chick is in the nest. It is calling for food the way every chick calls for food. And the parenting instinct that has worked for this species for millions of years simply activates. No questions asked, no second inspection, no chance to reconsider once the calling starts. Which means, the moment that cowbird chick hatches, it starts a race the cardinal's own chicks did not sign up for and cannot win on equal terms. Cowbird chicks typically hatch a day or two earlier than the cardinal's own eggs and grow dramatically faster, developing bigger and stronger in a shorter window than any cardinal nestling ever could, in a nest with limited food, arriving at limited intervals. The biggest, loudest, most aggressively begging chick tends to get fed first and most. That chick is very often the cowbird. The cardinal parents are not choosing to favor the intruder. They are responding to begging intensity, exactly the way their instincts evolved to respond. And the cowbird chick's biology is built, quite literally, to win that particular contest every time. Most people across the country who learn about this for the first time, in a backyard in Georgia, a park in Ohio, a nature center in the Carolinas, assume the cardinal parents are somehow being fooled in an obvious, almost comedic way, feeding a bird 3 times the size of their own chicks without noticing anything unusual. In reality, the cowbird chick's size difference often becomes visually dramatic only in the final days before fledging. For much of the nesting period, the difference is present but not glaring, and the begging behavior that drives feeding decisions moment to moment is powerful enough to override whatever visual mismatch a human observer would catch instantly from a few feet away, standing there with the advantage of already knowing exactly what to look for. But researchers found something they did not expect when they tracked outcomes across parasitized cardinal nests over multiple seasons. The cardinal's own chicks do not always die. In some nests, they simply receive less food, fledge smaller and lighter than they would have otherwise, and survive at somewhat lower rates into their first few weeks of independence, carrying a disadvantage that traces directly back to a single egg laid weeks earlier by a bird they never saw. In other nests, particularly ones parasitized early or with multiple cowbird eggs, the outcome is far more severe. The cardinal's biological offspring are outcompeted so thoroughly that few or none survive to fledge, while the cowbird chick grows to independence entirely on cardinal-provided food in a cardinal-built nest under cardinal parental care from beginning to end, never once treated as anything other than one of the family, which means an entire cardinal breeding season, from nest construction through incubation through weeks of feeding runs, can end with the parents having successfully raised a bird that will never be a cardinal at all. While some or all of their actual genetic offspring did not survive the process, a fact the parents themselves have no way of ever registering as a loss. From the outside, at your feet or the following spring, that outcome is completely invisible. You will simply see fewer young cardinals than the number of eggs that were originally laid, and no obvious explanation for the difference, because the difference happened inside a nest you likely never found, resolved weeks earlier by a process that left no visible trace behind it. Here is where it gets even stranger. This is not a story about cardinals being poor parents or easily deceived in some particular fixable way. It is a genuine evolutionary standoff that has been running for a very long time, with cowbirds and their host species locked in an ongoing arms race that neither side has fully won. Some species that cowbirds parasitize heavily, like the American robin, have evolved the ability to recognize and reject a cowbird egg outright, tossing it from the nest within days. Cardinals, for reasons researchers are still working out, have not developed that same defense, at least not reliably. That does not make the cardinal a failure of a parent. It means this particular arms race, for this particular species, is still being fought, generation after generation, with no guarantee of which side gains ground next, and no way for any single cardinal to know which round he happens to be playing. Which means the next time you watch a cardinal working tirelessly at a nest in your yard, ferrying food back and forth dozens of times a day, you are watching a level of commitment that has nothing to do with certainty about whose chicks he's actually raising. He cannot verify parentage. He can only respond to a chick calling for food inside a nest he built and defended, and he will do that with everything he has, every single time, regardless of what species that calling chick actually turns out to be. It is not a weakness in the bird. It is the exact same devotion that makes him a good parent in every case where a cowbird never finds his nest at all. The same instinct working perfectly, just occasionally aimed at the wrong chick by a system that has not yet caught up to a threat this specific and this well disguised. And the story is not over. Robins caught up. Some other host species have too, developing egg recognition sharp enough to spot and eject a cowbird egg within days of it appearing. There is no reason to assume cardinals are locked out of that same evolutionary trajectory forever, only that they have not gotten there yet, in a contest that has been running for far longer than any single breeding season could ever reveal. What looks, from your feeder, like a single sad story about one nest is really one small round in a much older, much larger competition, and the cardinal feeding a stranger's chick this summer is not losing so much as still playing, generation after generation, waiting for the adaptation that eventually turns the tables, the way it already has for other birds, sharing this exact same yard.